Looping is a way to repeat a certain set of instructions or actions multiple times. It enables a program to automatically perform a task over and over again without having to write the same code over and over. Imagine you have a list of items and you want to go through one by one and perform a specific action on each item. Instead of writing the same code for each item individually, you can use a loop to repeat the same code for every item in the list. So let's open our code and I'll explain to you how to use looping in Python. We are starting with our for loop. So we are going to generate a list of numbers. So to generate a list of numbers, we simply write the for first, and then we can use the range to specify the range of numbers we want. So if you check, there are a couple of parameters here. So we have the start, we have the stop, and then we have the step over here. So the start is where we are starting, the number we are starting with. So we can start with 0 and then we'll have our stop, maybe 25, and then we'll have the step. The step is simple, the increment. So if I put 1 over here, then I'll have my column just like this. So let me put x for x in range. So it's supposed to be like this. So you can have for x in range, or you can have change this to y, or you can just use anything you want over here. It's just a variable we've just initialized over there. So I can choose to go with x. So for x in range, then we have this. So we can come down and then we can try to print x. So now if I print x, and then I run my code, hopefully we'll have from 0 to 24 over here. So that's how to simple loop or simple generate a list of numbers from 0 to 24. We can also remove this 1. By default, the increment is 1. So if I remove the 1 and leave it like this and run the code, we'll have the same output over here because by default, the increment is always 1. You can also change the increment to something like 2. So maybe let me put 2. So now hopefully if I put 2, we'll have our increment change from 1 to 2. So 0 to 4, then we'll have 6, 8 going on. So that's how to simple generate a list of numbers with our for loop. So we can loop a list. So what do I mean? So if we have a list over here, so maybe I can have a list of all my courses. So I can have a list of courses just like so. So I can have JS, so JS for JavaScript, and then we can have maybe Python, so Python, and then we can have Next.js, so Next.js, and then we can also have our React JS, like so. Let me delete this. So React, sorry, capital R, I want capital R, so React JS, like so. So we have a list of courses over here. So what we want to do right now is to simple loop through this lib and then we'll iterate each item and we'll try to print it out. So to do so, we can have our for loop. So just write for, then you initialize your variable just like we did above, and then we can use x or maybe y, or you can just use anything. Maybe you can just have course, but make sure not to write your list name. So I cannot write courses, so there will be a problem with my code over here because this courses, that's the list. And then so we'll have to remove, so I can remove the s to make this course. So for course in, and then I'll bring my list, which is courses. So for course in courses, and then I'll have my column. So I can come down over here, then I can print. So I can print. So maybe let me write something like maybe course, and then I'll print the course. So course, like so. So hopefully if I run my code, we'll have our courses over here. We'll have JS, we'll have Python Next.js, and then we'll have our React.js over here. So this is how to simple loop through a list and iterate. So imagine if you have a list of almost maybe 100 items in the list. So this way the for loops comes in handy. You can just use 2 lines of code to loop through the whole list and then you print everything out. So I can also remove these courses and also and just leave it like so. Then I'll simply run my code, and then we'll have our JS, Python, Next.js, and React.js over here. So next is looping a string. So how do we loop a string? So I can have my string here, so I can call it sentence, and then I'll set it equals to something like this is the sentence I wanna split. No, not just split. I wanna loop. So this is the sentence I wanna loop. So I can come down, and then I can have my for loop. So I can have something like for character. So for character in, then we'll have sentence. So for character in sentence. So now if I try to print my character, so print character and run my code, and then we'll scroll, we'll have the characters loop. So this is the characters we've just looped over here. So we can also, let me clear the output first. We can also come over here, and then we can put an if statement. So what do I mean? So I can check if we get to maybe something like this I over here, and then we'll try to stop the loop over here. So how do we achieve this? So I can come, and then I can have a if statement. So I can check if character. So if character is equals to, maybe we'll have our I, capital I. Oh, sorry. This is JavaScript code I'm writing, so make sure to remove the parentheses. So hopefully we'll have our if statement like this. So if character is equals to I, then I want to break the loop. So let me break the loop. So what do we mean by breaking a loop? Meaning we want to exit from the loop. So now I can, let me remove my print, and then I'll simply send it. I can send it up. So watch what will happen if I send it up. So if I send it up, let's just send it on top. Let's send it on top over here. And let me try to indent it very well. So if we have the code like this, and then I try to run the code, check, it will loop, then it will get to this I, and then it will stop the loop at the I over here. So immediately we get to the I, we'll break our loop. We can also bring the print below so that we will not have this I. So what do I mean? If we check our previous code, so let me run the code once again. So if you check the previous code, we have the I printed over here. So now what we want to do is, we don't want to have the I. We want to just end the loop before the I. So we can print, or we can simply have our print pasted below. So let's have our print like so. So now hopefully if I run my code, we will not have the I. We'll simply loop, then we'll get to this E, and then we'll stop, or we'll simply break the loop over there. So that's how to simply break a loop. Next thing is continue. And continue means trying to jump. So if I put continue, so it means trying to skip. So you skip that character. So if I run the code, and then we come down, you will check that if we get to the I, we'll skip the I before, and then we'll have our loop over here. So it will iterate everything, and when it gets to the I, it will simple skip the I, and then it will continue with the next character. So that's how to use the continue and then the break. So next is using the else. So how do we use the else? So let me copy this. So I'll copy my loop, then I'll bring it over here. Then we can have an else statement attached to the loop. So watch what will happen if I put that else statement over here. So I can print, let me collapse this. I can print maybe done looping. So if I run my code, and then I scroll down, we'll have done looping. So this done looping will be executed if our looping is done. So if we are done with the iterations, so once the looping is done, is everything is completed, you can then have an else statement to then continue from here, and then you write your code. Maybe you want to loop through maybe hundreds of code, and then you want the looping to finish before you can execute your code. Then this where the else statement comes in handy, so that you simple have your loop above. After the looping is done, then you can continue with the else statement. Then you can have your code below going. So next is the while loop. So how do we use the while looping? So the while looping is used to iterate or to loop items based on a specific condition. So if a specific condition is true, so we can have maybe I, and then we can set it equals to 0. I can then have while. So while I is maybe something like maybe less than. So can I have less than or equals to 21, or let's just make, okay, let me make it maybe 10. So while I is less than or equals to 10, then I can print. So let me print I. So while this I is less than or equals to 10, I'll be printing I. So this is pure English. So if we just check, we are just checking to see if this I over here is less than 10, then we'll be printing I. So after that, we can come down. Then we'll try to increment the I. So I can have I. So sorry, I maybe plus. Can I have my plus? So plus or equals to 1. So now if I run my code, and then I come, let me scroll down, we'll have from 0 over here to 10. So that's simple how we use the while looping. So we are looping from what? 0 to 10 over here. And then I can increment it by 2, and then I'll run my code. And now, instead of incrementing by 1, we'll have 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and then we'll have our 10 over here. So that's the use of the while looping. We can also use the while looping to loop a list. So how do we do so? So I can have I again. So let me have I. Then I can set I equals to 0. And then the next thing I'll do is then I'll check while this I is less than, then we'll have our list over here. So let me copy this list, our courses list, and we'll try to loop through it. So let me paste it over here. So how I is less than then the length of our list. So we'll pass the length of our list. So courses like so. Then we'll try to print our courses. So how do we do so? We can print, then we'll have our courses like so. Then we'll put a square brackets, and inside the square brackets, I'll pass I. And then if I have my I, so maybe I plus or equals to, so let me add the equals to like so, 1. So now if I run my code, we'll loop through the list. So if I come down, if I scroll down, we'll have our list JS Python, then Next.js again, and then we'll have React. So this is how to also use the while loop to loop through a list. But if you check with the while loop, it's more complicated. So you can simply go with your for loop, which is simple, just 2 lines of code, and you are done. So why we are checking the length is because we don't want to try to iterate, and then we'll iterate beyond the length of our courses. So what do I mean? We have their indexes, right? And then we have 4 over here. We have 4 items. So if we don't use this over here, and then we try to iterate, so if I put something like maybe 5, and then I run my code, and then I scroll down, we'll have an index error because the list index over there is out of range. So that's why we use the length, and then we try to grab the length of the whole list before we can iterate. So I can change this to 4 because we have 4 items over here, and then I can run my code, and we'll still have the same output over here, JS, Python, Next.js, and then we'll have React. But why not grab this automatically? So maybe we have maybe 100 items over here. You cannot count the whole items, and then you write 100 over here. So it's simple to use the len than to write the number over here. So we check while this I is less than the length of our courses, then we'll print, then our courses, then we'll pass I, and this I will simple grab the index of all the items. So we'll start from 0 and then it will put 0 over here. Then it will add 1 and this will change to 1. And then next time it will put 1 over here and so on and so forth till it gets to the end of our courses.